Over the past several years, one of the concerns that a lot of political scientists have had is what appears to be a decline in the level of democracy in the United States. Whereas at one point, the United States was considered to be the freest and most democratic country in the world, in recent years, our scores have appeared to be sliding on most of the major indicators. Now we have fallen almost 10 points behind the United Kingdom and 17 points behind countries like Sweden or Norway on the Freedom House report, one of the more popular indicators of democracy. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Sean Williams, and I'm the lead professor of political science and the director of the Kentucky Heartland Institute on Public Policy located at Campbellsville University. I'm joined today by three members of our CU Senior Seminar team for this year. As they appear on my screen from top to bottom, we have Senior Zach Budd, who is also one of our bowling magnets. We have Luke Glasscock, who is one of our advanced sophomores looking to graduate early. And finally, but not least importantly, Sam Derrickson. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing this morning?
Very well, thank you.
Glad to hear it.
Absolutely wonderful.
So the topic of conversation today is in general democracy and democracy around the world. And the best way, I think, for us to examine what democracy is like in the United States is to think about it through the lens or the comparison of other countries. Specifically, what we want to focus on today is whether or not the campaign finance systems that we have in other countries, in Great Britain or in Bosnia, if the way that people select members to their legislatures has any effect on levels of democracy in those countries, and if there are any lessons that we can learn, or maybe some lessons we can teach to those countries that might improve ours or their democratic scores. So to get started in our conversation, I guess, first of all, what are some of the key differences between the American Congress that our viewers are probably more familiar with and the legislatures in the countries that you guys have been examining over the past couple of weeks?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things that's sort of different is the way the governments are technically formed. In the House of Commons in Britain, the majority party becomes the government. Whereas in the United States, they still work together, and it's seen as and there's not so much as a divide to have a majority government. So that's a major difference. They become the government.
Any other major differences you're aware of?
Another major difference that they have is that in the major government that Luke was talking about, the monarch appoints the prime minister, but the prime minister comes from the popular party of the House of Commons, and the prime minister gets to pretty much select his cabinet for specific portions of the government, which I believe it could be anyone he or she wants to appoint. But he gets to appoint, or they get to appoint whatever person they want for any position of title in the government as well, which is kind of similar to the United States, where you can appoint your your secretaries and whatnot. But I think it's a little different with the British parliamentary system, just because they get to they don't have an official election per se for each year for the presidents or for the prime ministry. I guess that's the plural of it. I don't know if that is a plural for it. And they also don't have general elections. They have elections, but they don't have repeated elections like we do in the United States. They don't have an election they can count on every 4 years. They don't have an election every 2 years, an election every year for different positions of power. So unlike the United States, you only have to campaign for the year you're up for your election or the year you're trying to get elected to take over the incumbent. But in Great Britain, you have to always be ready to campaign. You don't have a set date that you're looking at. You're like, oh, I need to start campaigning 6 months before. You always have to be ready for campaigning. You only get about 30 days to prepare yourself. I believe it is. It's 25 to 30 days to prepare yourself. And it's really difficult for them because they always have to be ready. They always have to have money and be able to campaign and advertise. And pretty much they're always, even if they've been in a seat for 20 years. I mean, this is as an example. They always have to be campaigning.
This is actually something you were mentioning a second ago, is something that just happened in Great Britain, I guess, in the last couple of weeks, where the prime minister basically decided to step down, or was forced to step down by his own political party. The political party had a new election. The only people who were allowed to vote in the entire country were members of that political party who had paid dues. And they effectively got to pick the next prime minister without ever going to anything like a popular referendum. Which brings us to another interesting difference between the United States and other countries around the world, the way in which candidates are actually selected for legislative office. So in the US, basically, we have this complicated primary system where candidates get to run for whatever political party they want, and the winners of the political party face each other in a general election. Is that the way that it works in other countries, or in the countries that y'all examined?
It actually doesn't work like that in Serbia and Herzegovina, the country that I focused on, and in in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In Bosnia, there is three ethnic groups: the Serbs, the Croats, and the Bosniaks. And within the country, the political parties are based on the ethnic groups, and only certain people from each ethnic group can run for either prime minister or for parliament. They have a seven-member parliament, and in Bosnia, you have to live within. There's two regions of Bosnia. You have to live within this region if you are a Bosniak, or if you are a Serb, you have to live in another region. So it's kind of completely different. It's all based off your ethnic background, and that is due to the civil war following the breakup of Yugoslavia in Bosnia, when Bosnia became its own country, and due to the ethnic cleansing that took place.
So I guess like a major difference, which you've already kind of mentioned, the primary elections that are held in the United States, like select party candidates. But in the United Kingdom, to run as like a partisan, you get in a constituency. The party actually has to like nominate you. So like the people, I guess, have less say in who actually gets to run as the party. They may get to vote between like a Labor conservative candidate, but they don't get to pick who their conservative candidate is or who their Labor candidate is. So that's like a major difference, I would say.
It seems like that those distinctions would fundamentally change levels of democracy, and would fundamentally change whether or not the member is representing the constituency that's elected them, or if they're representing the party, or if they're representing the ethnic group. Is that a fair assessment in those countries?
I would definitely say yes, especially, I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in, but in the United Kingdom, there's certainly like lots of frustration as far as like people feel that the candidates become sort of like a national based candidate, whereas they like technically should be like focusing on their constituency. But since it's so like party based, they can literally run on like a national platform instead of what they can do for their constituency and their like county districts, or however they're divided up.
Yeah, and the piggyback off of that too, for if they don't, they're as members of their party, if they're obligated to vote how their party wants them to, they can easily get kicked out from their party just for not voting the same way. Whereas, in the United States, if you don't vote the same way your party does, you can get kicked out, but it's not as easy. Whereas in the United Kingdom and Great Britain, if you don't conform to how they want you to act, they can just kick you out, like outright. I don't think they have to have a good particular reason to as well.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
Sam,
So,
Go ahead,
yeah.
Sam.
Excuse me. Sorry. Yes, sir. So, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, um, it's very, like I said, it's ethnic focused. So like your ethnic ties have each ethnic group has its own party or multiple parties. In the case of the Bosniaks, because the Bosniaks are a larger population, they're a larger percent of the population. Um, but it's before. So another thing I didn't mention is there's a prime minister, but there's also two deputy prime ministers. So it's kind of like they have three presidents in a way. Each ethnic group has a president, um, and well, prime minister, excuse me. And so it very much so doesn't feel like that these prime ministers or these members of parliament represent their constituents. They more so on the federal level. They more so focus on the betterment of the party that the ethnic group is affiliated with, if that makes sense. Um, Another thing about the way that Bosnia is structured is that the federal government, the government is very decentralized, and each of what the English translation would be counties. Each of the counties kind of have their own way of doing things. So it's not a central thing.
Yeah, that leads to a lot of questions. So in the United States, we've typically thought that we were very democratic because we were able to have this kind of personal relationship with our representatives or personal relationship with our members. We knew them by name, they had to live in our district. But it sounds like in all of these situations, you don't really have so much. Is it accurate to say you don't have so much of the relationship between the member because you're tied more closely to the ideology of the political party? Is that right, or do they still see the same levels of relationship that we have in the United States? What is y'all's impression?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say, like, because I wouldn't say, like, this not like you have a personal relationship, like one-on-one basis with your senator or your congressman, like to that extent. But like in Great Britain, like members of parliament aren't actually required to live in their districts or their counties or however it goes. So yeah, but there's still a sentiment that they're not connected to their MPs because it's so like party based. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I would agree too, just because with the United States, like how Luke was going off of the United States, you pretty much understand the campaigning they have to do for your senators, your congressmen, your mayors, your everybody. When you get to the lower level of county representatives, city representatives, more of your area representatives, you kind of know them as more of a personal person rather than if they're a Republican, a Democrat, Green Party, etc. Whereas when you get to state levels and national level elections, you know them by their party rather than their personal gains. So I would say, I can't speak as a member of the of Great Britain or as a citizen, but I would believe that they probably, since the parties run the whole country as a whole, I would doubt that they would also have a personal, or not even a personal, but they would get to know their representatives more, especially since they're chosen rather than elected. At any level really, like they would have in the United States.
So given that the election process in terms of candidate selection appears to be more party centric, does the same thing apply to the system of campaign finance? Is there a sense that parties are more involved in elections in the countries you examined? Are they more responsible for raising money? Or is it kind of like it here in the United States, where the candidate is largely responsible for putting their own campaign together and they handle most of their own spending? How does it work where y'all were looking?
Sam, do you have anything to say? Otherwise, I'll jump in real fast.
Oh yeah, I can go. From what I gathered, it's so I'm gonna kind of touch on the personal connection that we just passed. I'm gonna get to the finances issue, but um, in Bosnia, it like I said, it's all based on ethnicity. So even if you don't necessarily support the candidate, you are going to support him as much as your ethnic ties make you, if that makes sense. It's most of the ethnic groups, all three of the ethnic groups, they all are kind of fighting for dominance. So they probably hardly ever will support a candidate from another ethnic group. It's just the way that it is there. I mean, it's a country who went through a lot. But as far as finances, each party is responsible for raising the money, and I think that you have to raise money based on your ethnic group, which would make sense. I mean, I don't think that like a Bosniak would give a Serb, but I mean, you know, in the common scheme of things, like on a normal basis. But it's all by ethnic groups, and each ethnic group kind of lifts the party, and then in that ethnic group, if there's multiple parties, then you choose who you would want to donate to and things like that, or raise money, or however you would want to assist in the finance part of campaigns and that type of thing.
Luke, you were going to go?
So I would. So in the United Kingdom, I was just gonna say, so you know they can raise campaign money on an individual basis, but it's not as like common, nor as like large as it is in the United States. And of course, the United States also has campaign, or excuse me, financial committees for campaigns, congressional ones, Senate ones that are partisan based, but it's still not as like this inter-party like governance. You know, like they don't. It's just not structured. People can still run without the support of money coming from the top. So that's all I was to say. It's just that it's largely based on money allocated from the campaigns in the United Kingdom, which is a major sort of difference. It would actually be very difficult to run as a partisan without the support of the money from their party.
You do also get more money for where you're trying to get your votes from. I believe in the financial laws that I looked up, it was you get, for government assistance at least, you get 6 pence per rural and 9 pence per urban vote that you get, or for campaign finances. It could be mixed around, but you do get financial compensation for each vote you get in certain areas where there are more or less population as well. So there is benefits to, you know, campaigning in a bigger city versus a smaller city, or in the certain areas of the city that have different financial financial areas that are, you know, a little bit more wealthy, a little bit more poor. So, you know, if you were to go campaigning in the more wealthy areas, and you're going to get a lot of people in the more wealthy areas, you get more money that way.
It seems like under those circumstances, just like with the election systems, that the candidate would once again be more beholden to the political party than necessarily the local constituent, even more so than here in the United States. Given all that, is there any evidence from the work that y'all have done that the system for campaign finance or the system for elections has an impact on how much citizens trust the political system, or trust their government, trust their political parties? Does it seem like they have more faith in their institutions in your countries, or that Americans tend to like theirs a little bit more?
So what I found is it actually kind of like goes the United States and the United Kingdom, like different measurements of trust in government go back and forth. So there's really not an overwhelming trust in government in either one. Very rarely is it over a 50% mark. Like sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. So it's really hard to say on that.
I know that in my paper that I wrote, there was a source that I had, that it was by Sam Powers, The Transparency Paradox, was written about how the whole point of the of the campaign finance laws is to help promote transparency with the candidates and their constituencies that they were voting for and their voters. Sam pretty much goes on saying that like transparency alone with these laws will not necessarily help voters feel more confident or less confident in their government. It actually can do both. It can make them more confident and also less confident, because you also have the belief that there are government entities finding loopholes in the laws and avoiding ways to report their donations that they got and their spendings, which, happens just about everywhere. There's people that are always trying to get out of loopholes or the law so they can make more money. So you pretty much said that there's transparency alone with the regulations will not necessarily help people trust their government more, but I think it is a right step to do, but there's always going to be some kind of illicit actions going on behind the scenes that, especially in a government setting, that everyone is going to be not necessarily trustworthy of their government in that sense too, especially when it comes to money.
It's an old saying that you don't want to you don't want to watch the sausage being made if you're the one that has to eat it, kind of thing, I guess. Mr. Derrickson, I apologize. You were going to say.
No, sir, you're fine. According to the World Bank, Bosnia and Herzegovina, its trust in the government, its rating as far as government effectiveness is 15% of the population there, and which is like bottom tier in the world. Countries like Germany have 95%. Countries like France are 70 plus. So Bosnia is like even like compared to like America, Bosnia is extremely, extremely low. And I think one of the reasons is the lack of transparency. A lot of people do not feel like they have a voice. The Croat population there feels like they have no voice at all, and are actually wanting to create their own territory where they will feel like will be more heard. There is no transparency as far as money is raised. There's no transparency, kind of even in how these parties vet each candidate and who makes these decisions. It's really hard to find any literature on that type of thing because it's kind of hush hush. It's not like America or Great Britain where it's all public and it's transparent. So where Zach was saying that transparency alone, according to the article he was reading, wasn't enough. I think that a country like Bosnia and Herzegovina could greatly benefit from more transparency as far as their trust in the government goes.
That idea of who could benefit and who couldn't. I guess we're just about out of time. We're getting close to the 30-minute mark, so this might be the last question that we cover. But after you have spent some time now investigating the campaign finance reforms, in particular, the election laws in general in your countries, do you think that there is anything from these countries that America could learn? Do you think that we could adopt any of their strategies to make us better? Or do you think that maybe the way that we do it has more advantages than disadvantages? Zach, I'm going to go ahead and let you go first.
Sorry, I was...
Yeah.
Hit the question one more time. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, do you think that there is anything that we could learn from the countries that you studied, or do you think the other way around, that the other countries maybe should learn a little bit from us?
Yeah, I think that I'm going to kind of go back on what I said about the transparency, and I kind of agree with Sam that transparency with finances is very important. Like I said earlier, it may not necessarily correlate into more trust in the government, but I do think it is a right step to having more trust in the government. So with the United States, I believe they have campaign laws and finance laws that they have to do. I haven't looked too much into them, but they're not as strict as they are in the United Kingdom. So I believe, though, that transparency with the financials, with campaign regulations, with and just in government in general, just being as transparent as you can. Ironically, this is kind of off topic, but the FBI is like slowly releasing UFO sighting information through, I think it was, I don't know the name of the act, but it's pretty much a Transparency Act. That correlation of transparency of what the government is doing for their people could help more people believe in their government, even though they don't necessarily, people might not think that they're telling the truth or they're making things up, but it does help people believe in their government and their people that they're voting for, the people that are running their country, so that when situation come up, maybe like another COVID or another war comes up, people will have more confidence that they know what their government is doing, that they know what is going on. And I believe that a lot of countries could benefit from the representation being fully transparent in their actions instead of being so hush hush and secret about it. I also think that Great Britain could benefit also from not not electing their own representatives and pretty much giving it to their voters when they do have their election days, being like, hey, you have to vote for these two people. You can't go off and vote for your dad who's a member of the party but hasn't paid his dues, but he can't vote because no one likes him. I think that it would be more beneficial for a country to be able to vote in whoever they want to, like technically we have in the United States. I mean, you have to go through the regulations of signing up and getting on the ballot. Of course, it's difficult, especially in the electoral college. But excuse me. But I do think that they would benefit a lot from not having restrictions on who they can and can't vote for.
Sam, over to you. What do you think? Are we better off the way we are, or do you think that we'd benefit more if we were to adopt something like the Bosnian system?
You cut out. Were you speaking to me, sir?
Yeah. What do you? Same question to you.
Okay, yes, sir. I think that the two could kind of learn a little bit from each other. I think that Bosnia could, America, it's not as like open as far as the financial processes and campaigning, or even the campaigning process, as like a Great Britain where things are more regulated. I mean, you hear numbers through like lobbying groups and different things like that. Things are leaked. This group paid this and those type of things to get their agenda pushed. I think that even that little bit of transparency could help Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'd say one thing that I think that a group of Americans could pull from Bosnia and Herzegovina, while it has been incredibly divisive in the country as far as the parties and the groups being ethnically aligned, it has kept the smaller ethnic groups like the Croats, and even there's an other like not a party, but there is one seat in parliament that is meant for the other, which is like 3% of the population there. And it kind of gives those people who could feel disenfranchised a platform. I think one thing that America could pull from that, as far as like Black Americans, like African Americans, rallying together and coming together to form, if not a party, maybe a lobbying group that helps us get our needs met, helps us accomplish things, tangible things that will actually help our community. I think that that'd be one thing that I could see that we could pull from them.
It is a fair point. Here in the United States, we've never really had the formation of a successful ethnic party, right? I mean, I guess maybe you could argue that in the 1950s, the Dixiecrats might have been a white ethnic party, but that sort of kind of defeats the purpose of the argument. It's a fair point. Mr. Glasscup, you get the final word.
Oh, good. So I want to go back to what Sam was saying about his country, trust in government. I think he said it was like the lowest, one of the lowest in the world. So I think this kind of indicates, so if you use the example of Switzerland, which is another country that I found, they have some of the most lax campaign finance laws. They have you don't have to report who the money comes from, how it's used, and stuff like that, which is required in the United States and the United Kingdom. But yet their trust in government is super. It's one of the highest, 80-90% trust in government. So I think it kind of indicates that it's almost a function of being controlled into you're voting for this ethnic group or you're voting for this party. And so I think that actually relates to trust in government more so than how the transparency of the campaign laws are. One campaign law that I do think the United States should absolutely adopt from the United Kingdom is in the UK, they are not allowed to broadcast political campaigns. So I definitely think we should take their note on that. But as far as other things, it's kind of hard to compare. They have a parliamentary system. It works a lot different than our system. So as far as like this party oriented system that they have, it's not necessarily adaptable to the United States, considering that we don't use like the Westminster model of government that they do. So.
Yeah, it's a fair point. So we're just about out of time. So very quickly, I want to thank all of my guests for hanging out with me today. We are currently, at the time of this recording, in the middle of cold, flu, and allergy season. And so, Zach, I appreciate specifically appreciate you being here because I know that you're not feeling very well today. For those of you who happen to watch us at home or maybe who are watching this on the rebroadcast, please feel free, and we would appreciate it if you would like us and click the notification button. And join us next week whenever we meet at the same time, 8:30 in the morning on Thursday, 9/29. Our topic of our next discussion is going to be the impact of socialized healthcare in European countries, particularly as it relates to their standard of living and socioeconomic factors. So thank you again, everyone, to join us, and hope to see you all next time. Bye-bye.